Second half for what? Hey, last time we were talking about Psalms. Second half.
Tom, I have one.
All right.
Um, I still have been thinking about, I don't know, it was a couple months ago when you prayed on a Friday night and you prayed about all of the different times that Israel was under, or Jerusalem or Israel was under attack, and you started at the very beginning. I was just wondering if you could quickly go through that again, from the very beginning of when Israel was attacked and how it's being attacked now. That prayer was just, it really made me think about how long it's been that Israel has been under attack. So could you just do an overview? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't honestly.
Well, it was taken over by Babylon and even before
Oh,
that.
okay.
You know what I'm talking about? Up until the present time.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Let me just interject. Last week we were doing little much, and you said I'm only halfway through.
okay. No, we were doing that which is another man's.
Well, yeah, they were tied in there together. The
Right,
first half
yes,
was being
yes.
just a bit little, and the second half was.
Um,
the other man.
yeah, well, obviously Israel has been a focus of Satan's hatred since God called Abraham. And we know from Revelation, um, that Revelation 12, that the dragon, who's the dragon?
Satan.
How do we know that?
It says it is
Where?
in Revelation.
Where?
Nine.
12:9. 12:9 says that the dragon is Satan. We don't have to guess at that. We're not making some theological statement. And what has been the attitude of the dragon toward the woman? Who's the woman?
Israel.
Yeah, I had somebody in the church that was listening to some wackadoodle on the internet from Korea or someplace where supposedly they were filled with the Spirit and prophesying, and that this woman was, and I don't know what it was, but because these stars were the only 12-star constellation is this, so they were from the constellation Virgo or some stupidity like that had to do with the zodiac, and there's 12 symbols of the zodiac, and the 12 stars were the zodiac symbols, and just on in their stupidity. Who's the woman?
Israel.
How do we know that? How do we know the woman is Israel?
Doesn't it say it?
It does not. Or it does not say those exact words. This woman is Israel, like it does with the dragon. How do we know this woman is Israel?
I have a note in my Bible that says Israel and Joseph's dream. I don't know if that's correct.
What about Joseph's dream?
I don't know.
Well, is it because she gave birth to a son and the son is...
What about Joseph's dream?
He had the dream that they all bowed down to.
Who's they all?
Well, his brothers and his mom.
No, his brothers did not. That's an interpretation. Who bowed down?
They did bow down to him, though.
Who bowed down in Joseph's
The
dream?
stars.
Brothers.
The stars,
Well,
the sun, and the moon. In Joseph's dream, who was the sun? Jacob. Who was the moon? the mother. Who were that point 11 stars?
The sons.
The brothers. So we know
Go backwards. The son is Jacob.
the mother is Rachel. The moon is Rachel. And the stars were his brothers. And who are his brothers? The 12 tribes. So based on scripture, and remember, when the Bible gives images, where do those images come from? Where do those images come from? From the Bible itself. So when the Bible talks about the sun, the moon, and 12 stars, who are we talking about? Jacob, his wife, and the 12 tribes. Who is that? Israel. So the woman is Israel. What is the attitude of the dragon to the woman?
He's going to prevent her from giving birth.
He wants to destroy her child,
Her child is Jesus.
is Jesus. But notice what it says, verse 6. Why? Why is she fleeing into the desert?
Because the dragon wants to eat the son.
Because the dragon wants to destroy her. So Satan has always plotted to destroy Israel. So what has been the things that God used to do that? Today we're still seeing it.
Other nations.
So who?
Well, like us,
Who? Name them.
against or for Israel?
Against.
Oh.
Who tried to destroy
Germany.
Israel?
The neighboring nations.
Who?
Germany.
Muslims, the Arabs,
The
Iran.
There
Nazis.
were no Muslims, there were no
the
Arabs,
Palestinians,
there were no Palestinians.
You mean further back?
Oh, way further back.
Babylonians, Assyrians.
Before them,
Egypt?
Egypt invaded them multiple times. Before Egypt invaded them,
Persia and Syria.
long before that,
Before.
500 years, 700 years before that. You can read through biblical history and you do it in an afternoon and it sounds like but when you talk 700 years, think about where the world was 700 years ago.
Very different.
700 years is a long time. It doesn't seem it when you're talking 4,000 years ago. Oh, well, that's just 700 years. But think about, 700, we were 1400 BC, AD.
The problem I have with that is that transportation took off in the last 200.
Correct.
So to look 200 years back and further back, it seems very similar.
But politically speaking, the transformation was immense. Who's the first people that oppress Israel? We know the names of some of them, the individual names.
The Edomites.
The Edomites, the Moabites,
The Jebusites.
the less so, they weren't quite as
Jebusites.
powerful a tribe.
The Jebusites.
The Hittites,
I have trouble pronouncing
the
some.
Amorites, and the big one that had the big guy,
What? Oh,
Philistines.
the Philistines,
Goliath?
who had Goliath. So we have all of these, and those take us up through the time of David. Because remember, what happens in David's day? Who was really running things around Israel in David's day? The Philistines. So when Saul's hunting David and it gets so hot, what's David do?
I,
Oh, they drive him out of the cave.
you're talking about drawing a
Oh.
beard and,
Yeah, when he went when he acted like he was crazy.
He went to the Philistines because it was the only way to get away from Saul. And one of the things the Philistines believed was that madmen were touched by the gods and you couldn't harm them because they were somehow connected to the gods.
How did David know that?
oh.
Because
well,
he
how-
lived with them.
It's current events. How would he
Yeah,
not know?
how would you know? How would you know what the Russians think or the Chinese think today? Because people discussed your neighbors. So David pretends he's a psycho and he goes down and he plays his role and they go, wow, he went nuts. Don't touch him. And he stays there a few months with them while Saul is looking for him. So you've got all of these local tribes, but those local tribes slowly get devoured by who? Who devours all those local tribes? And it is the first of the big things to emerge.
Not Egypt.
Babylon.
No, pre-Babylon. And there's a book of the Bible that's written two books of the Bible written to this people. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Neither one of them wanted to do it. Well, the second one didn't have as much objection as the first. The first one definitely didn't want to do it. Jonah,
Oh.
who does he go to?
Nineveh.
Who is Nineveh? I never understood that. I thought, Nineveh, who's
Yeah,
Nineveh?
they're part of a big,
They were
Assyria.
the capital of Assyria. And Assyria is the big empire, the first of the big empires.
isn't Babylon the first of the?
No, Babylon takes over Assyria.
But they're the-
Assyria,
But Assyria was never a world empire, right?
oh yeah,
Syria took over all the tribes of
yeah.
Israel.
But I always thought like Babylon and then,
No,
Babylon took.
the reason you start at Babylon is because Assyria was already gone by the time Daniel's around. But it predates him
okay,
by about
Assyria was the
150,
first-
200 years. Oh yeah.
Assyria's the first empire.
And what does Assyria do? What is Assyria's interaction with Israel?
Well, they take them all out of Samaria and move other groups in there.
Assyria conquers the northern kingdom of Israel, as opposed to the kingdom of Judah. It conquers the 10 tribes. And what does Assyria do to the 10 tribes?
Enslave them?
They had a policy to keep people pacified. If you leave people in their own land, they'll fight for it. So what do?
Take them out.
You take them out and you send them someplace that they don't care about, and you move the people from there to their land. Because you won't, if Russia had conquered the United States 70 years ago, and they moved all of us to Guatemala, would you fight for Guatemala?
No.
So that's what they did. And at that point, all of the northern tribes was depeopled and they moved Gentiles in. What group of people does that become? The Samaritans, half-breeds, half Jewish, half Gentile, intermarried.
Half Assyrian Gentile.
Well, no, because it was other conquered people. They took people from out towards India and moved them in and moved Israel all over the empire.
And that wasn't, was that part of that Samaria? Were they part of the 10 tribes?
Yes, that's the 10 tribes.
So the 2.5, the 2 tribes.
Two and a half,
Half
actually.
Jews and half what?
Gentiles.
Okay, and then, but not all, they still, that was the Samaritan, but they still had.
Samaritans, yes.
Samaritans, I'm sorry, But they still had the 10 tribes, correct? Like,
They were all intermingled at that point. They were all,
so
Now-
the northern kingdom was intermingled.
done away with.
And they were dispersed too, you just said.
Right.
One place.
Now, how were the 10 tribes preserved? Important history. How did God preserve those 10 tribes? Anybody know? This is important history. You go back in Isaiah and in Chronicles and in Kings, and who's the king during the time of this Assyrian invasion?
Hezekiah.
Hezekiah. What does Hezekiah do?
Somehow get.
He sends couriers to all of Israel, the northern kingdom, saying, come to Jerusalem to worship God in a restored temple. And the faithful of throughout northern Israel, as far away as Ephraim, which is up around the Sea of Galilee, and Manasseh, come.
So this is prior to the Assyrian takeover. So did he know this was going to happen, or did?
God did.
I guess.
And what happens to most of those people after the festival?
He stayed.
They stayed. God's here. God's not up there where these people are invading. We'll stay here, thank you.
But that was the bulk of the people that stayed
No.
in Samaria?
Just the remnant. But that's how God preserved the 10 tribes.
Okay, but I mean, did the remnant stay up in Samaria, or did the remnant stay in
In-
southern Israel?
In Judah.
Okay, so that's the remnant, the small part. Okay,
Yep.
got it.
Now, Assyria conquers and totally destroys them and disperses them. And then they invade Judah. And they destroy all the strong places in Judah except for one, and that is, you can read all this in Chronicles, Kings, and Isaiah, because they all, what did they not destroy? Jerusalem, and they besiege it. And the siege becomes so bad that it talks about, people spending what would be today $1 million for the afterbirth of a child to eat. And when everybody's going to die in the city, there's nothing left. These lepers go, hey, if we're going to die, let's go out to the Syrians. They'll do it quick. And they go out to the Assyrian camp, and guess what? It's empty. They pulled out in the middle of the night, right on the verge of their victory, because the king got a message that there had been a revolt in the capital and that he was going to be overthrown. And it was more important for him to save his power in his own city than to conquer Jerusalem. So he marched his army away. At the same time, there had been a plague that spread out, because it was horrible to be besieged. It was horrible to be besieged because you're living out in the middle of nowhere with a couple hundred, 400,000 or 500,000 people, with the kind of sanitation they had in those days. Guess how many people could get sick if the dysentery or something like that started to spread? He marches away and Jerusalem saved.
Who's this king?
The king of Assyria, I forget his name.
Sennacherib?
So yeah, Sennacherib. And he says, adios, I'm going back to my own land. And he never feels confident enough to leave his capital after that revolt. So Judah remains a strong kingdom.
So God spares Judah.
Yep. Now,
That's in Chronicles?
yep, 33, 34,
17 to 20
and 17 to 20 in 2 Kings, yeah. And then what happens to Assyria?
It gets overthrown.
By
Babylon.
Babylon? Where is Assyria?
North.
Where is Assyria? If you were to look on a map today, where is Assyria? Modern day
Iran?
Lebanon / Syria. It's the area of modern day Lebanon, Syria. Where is Babylon?
Iraq.
Modern day Iraq. They invade west out of Iraq into Syria and destroy Syria. Nineveh, which is its capital, which had these beautiful hanging gardens and all kinds of things, which Babylon tried to copy. They also had their hanging gardens. They destroy the capital of Nineveh, raze it to the ground. Now Babylon's the kingdom. What do?
Take over Judah.
They eventually conquered Judah 150 years after Assyria destroyed the northern tribes. 150 years later, Babylon destroys Judah. And they take everyone, they did not relocate people the way Assyria did. They didn't swap people out. So Judah basically stays intact. What was their plan to pacify people?
Okay, them into the.
Take everybody of value in the society and bring them back to the capital where you can keep an eye on them. So they march away
The capital of Babylon.
of Babylon.
So that's all the Daniels.
That's Daniel, his
Shadrach,
friends, Ezekiel, all of the royal court who were so corrupt that their names don't even matter when they get there. But all of those people are hauled back to Babylon where the king can keep them under his thumb. And the common people, you guys rebel, guess what? It's curtains for your leaders. They're hostages. But they prosper in Babylon. And in fact, when Babylon falls, a lot of them never come home because they've made a life in Babylon by that point.
Mister, I have a question. When Assyria comes in, it's a divided kingdom at the
Yeah.
time. They go in, kill the north, or take over the north. The ones that came down, now is that no longer a divided kingdom? Is Judah?
Well, by that point, from then on, Israel, the northern tribes are just part of that empire.
Okay,
They're never free again.
but is it, well, I thought they've all mixed, so they're all
Yeah.
Samaritans. So is Judah now, Judah all of the 12 tribes?
There are representatives of all the 13 tribes there.
Right, okay. So there's no more northern kingdom.
The northern kingdom does not exist.
Gotcha.
And the people there are intermingled. What happens to Babylon?
It gets invaded.
It gets invaded by
Persia.
Persia.
Media.
Where is Persia?
Iran.
Iran. Again, we're going further east. They invade they lay siege to the city of Babylon, which is the capital of the nation or kingdom or empire of Babylon. And they lay siege for 3 years and they can't get in. And what do?
Through that river, they stop.
They cofferdam the river upstream, march their army away as though they've given up the siege. Yup, we're out of here. We can't take it anymore. You won. And that night, they finish the cofferdam, the river dries up, and they march under the wall where the river used to be. And they conquer the city of Babylon in one night.
Writing on the.
Yeah, and that's the story of Belshazzar and the hand that draws on the wall tonight, mene, tekel, upharsin.
Is this Cyrus?
This would be, Yeah, I think his grandfather.
Gotcha.
Then, maybe his father. Babylon or Persia has a different philosophy of how to deal with conquered peoples. Assyria was mix them. Babylon is take the best of them and hold them hostage. Persia's policy is
Keep the leaders there, but rule over them.
nope. Send them all back to their own homes and hopefully we'll buy their loyalty by showing kindness to them. You want to go home? Go home. As long as you'll stay loyal to us, we'll let you live. And so you begin the exodus back to Israel under, you need 3 names. Who are the 3 names that go back to Israel? With maybe 100,000 people.
Zerubbabel?
Zerubbabel, Nehemiah, no. The book in the Bible,
Jeremiah.
Ezra.
Ezra. Zerubbabel and Ezra go back first. A number of years later, Nehemiah has permission to go back and rebuild the wall after they've built the temple back.
Zerubbabel is the king, right?
No one, they had no king. He was the first quasi-governor, but he was not a full governor.
But was he the bloodline of the king?
Yeah, he was part of David's family, yes. But he's also accounted as being a priest. And that shouldn't be able to happen, but that's one of those prophecies that allow for Jesus.
Well, the second temple was called Zerubbabel's temple, right?
Because he's the one that rebuilt it, along with Ezra. Now, Persia lasts a very long time. From the 600s to the 300s. And then who comes in?
Greeks.
The Greeks. And the Greeks only last 10 years because what happens?
Fighting.
Alexander the Great dies.
Alexander the Great dies, 33 years old, started conquering the world at 16. In 17 years, he conquers every one of the major empires of the Middle East. He has no children, no recognized legitimate children. He may have hundreds of children. We don't know how many, but he has no recognized official. This was the queen of the nation. Heir apparent. So his kingdom is divided into 4 generals, 2 of which are irrelevant. You don't need to learn them, but 2 of which you need to know about. They are the Ptolemies. There's a P in front of that. There's a silent P. It's PT. The Ptolemies, they were the Egyptian portion of his kingdom. They took over Egypt. What person do you know who was part of the Ptolemaic dynasty? And everybody at this table knows the name.
Start with an S.
Starts with a C. No. But the person was involved with Caesar. No. Wrong gender.
Oh, Cleopatra.
Cleopatra. And that's why we know Cleopatra was not black like this stupid thing on, what was it, Netflix or one of them that tried to say, my grandmother always told me Cleopatra was black. No, she wasn't. She was pure blood of what race? What ethnic group? Greek. She was a fully blooded Greek because the Ptolemies very much prevented any intermarriage between themselves and the locals in Egypt. And that's why the nation of Egypt sued Netflix over that movie, because they said it was an attack on their history, because they recognize the truth of who Cleopatra was.
Egypt sued?
Yes, the entire nation.
Why would they sue when the Greeks were?
Because it was Egyptian history.
Oh, okay.
She was an Egyptian Ptolemaic princess, queen,
I thought she was Greek.
because she was from the Greek family, but it was divided.
Oh, I see.
That part of the kingdom was they took over Egypt.
Gotcha.
The other one that you need to know is the Seleucid Empire. The Seleucid Empire, after the Greek general Seleucus, as opposed to Ptolemy. Who's the name that you need to know from the Seleucid Empire?
Antiochus Epiphanes?
Absolutely, Antiochus, who is the first type of Antichrist. He is the first person that points to Antichrist. And here's the Ptolemies, here's the Seleucids. They're fighting because both of them want to reunite that portion of the empire under one ruler. And who do they want to be the ruler? Well, the Ptolemies want the Ptolemies, the Seleucids want the Seleucids. So they invade each other all the time. Here's the Seleucids down south. Here's the Ptolemies down south. Here's the Seleucids up north. And what's right in ground zero in the middle?
Israel.
Israel. So Israel is fought over by the two of them for 200 years. From the 300s, the close of the Old Testament, to the 150s BC.
The close of the Old Testament is when?
330 something.
Okay.
They always say
I thought there's a
333.
I thought there's a 400.
Because when's the first New Testament book written?
Oh,
65.
No,
30.
40s, 50s. So basically you're talking 330 plus 50 years is basically 400 years.
So this is kind of like Eastern Europe where forces are just
Go
constant.
back and forth, back and forth. And then the Seleucids attack Israel. Israel gains its independence in 167 BC
From whom?
from the Seleucid Empire
How?
by staging a guerrilla warfare under, you know the name.
You're talking about the Jews?
Yep,
Judas the Hammer?
Judas Maccabeus, the Maccabean Revolt, 160s.
Judas the Hammer.
Yeah, that's what Maccabee,
That's his wrestling name.
yeah. He's one of those Mexican guys with the masks.
He wore a giant hammer.
For 100 years, Israel's an independent nation from 167 or so BC to about 67 BC. In 67 BC, the Seleucid army finally says, we've had enough of you, and they invade with a massive army. And one gentleman goes out to meet the entire army. Do you know what he's wearing? No armor, no sword.
This isn't David, is it?
No. He's wearing a toga. He is a senator from Rome. And as the Seleucid army advances down along the shore of the Mediterranean to invade Israel, he walks out into the sand, all by himself.
Does he draw a circle around himself?
No, around. And the general stops the army and says, what do you want? And he says, Rome says, take one more step and you have war with Rome. And he said, the Seleucid general king said, I'll need time to think. And he takes his walking staff and he draws a circle around the king, the general.
Oh, it's close.
And he says, you can take as long as you want, but if you step across that line before I have an answer, you're at war with Rome. And today we still have the phrase, step across that line.
Is that guy somebody famous now, or like, did he go in?
Probably, I forget his name at
I
this
was
point.
gonna say Clint Eastwood.
Yes. And they already knew the Ptolemies were going to fight them over Israel. They knew, unlike Hitler, you can't fight a war on two fronts and win it. So he turns his army around and marches back to his capital up in the Seleucid Empire. But at that point, to protect Israel from another invasion, who shows up? The Roman legions. And they march into Israel as friends, as protectors against those bad Seleucids. And guess what?
They take
They're
over.
under Rome.
Yeah, now you're under Rome.
Now you're paying taxes to Rome.
Now you're slaves to Rome.
That's how they came in.
That's how they
Jesus'
came in.
time.
Yeah,
So
60, 70 years before Jesus' time, yes.
technically, Rome has not invaded.
Nope,
We asked,
they were invited in. That's like inviting a tiger into your house for dinner.
Well, people have dogs for protection and the dogs sometimes attack the homeowners.
Right.
Very similar.
But more like a tiger or a lion than a dog. Rome was not domesticated when they came in. But again, Israel was afraid of the local guys more than those people far away in Rome. They go, oh, they won't hurt us. That's what happens when you naively trust the good intentions of people. And that brings us all the way to the end of the Roman period, which is well into the Middle Ages. And who's the next people that finally drive the Romans out?
Barbarians, Germans.
No, they destroy the Western Empire, but not the Eastern. The Eastern Empire persists into the 6, almost 700s. It becomes known as the Byzantine Empire. What is its capital?
Constantinople.
Constantinople. And it holds out until the Muslims.
Thinking Muslim.
The Muslims take over and destroy Constantinople, and they form the Ottoman Empire that lasts until World War
Muslims,
I.
Ishmael.
Yeah,
the odd,
and that lasts until World War I.
is that like an ottoman that you have
No.
in your house?
And they dream of reinstating.
Yes, and their longing is to
And I've heard a lot of people
reinstate the caliphate.
say that
Yes.
the Ottoman Empire is Gog and Magog. I've heard a lot of people argue that.
They could be. Except that it has to be north of the Caspian Sea, and the Ottoman Empire was never north of the Caspian Sea.
Why does it have to be north of the Caspian Sea?
Because I'd have to look up the verse.
Okay.
But that's, in Ezekiel, it talks about the people from beyond the Caspian Sea. What is today called the Caspian Sea has a different name then.
Muhammad was the start of the Muslims. So
Correct.
was that in 600 AD or
Yeah.
around there? So the Catholic Church had been around for a while, at least 300 years, I guess.
Well, Peter was the first pope.
Yeah. Yeah, the Catholic Church doesn't really. There's a misnomer that Constantine declared the empire Christian in the mid 300s or early 300s. That is a misnomer. Constantine did not turn the empire Christian. That is not true. Up to that point, what had Christianity been?
Biblical Christianity.
Biblical Christianity, what had it been?
But that's what it was.
But what had it been?
Following the law.
It had been a forbidden religion. Being a Christian was a
Crime.
crime. It was a crime. You could be punished for it up to the, death penalty. You could be killed for being a Christian. It was a crime against the empire.
Constantine made it legal.
All Constantine did was he said Christianity is no longer a forbidden religion. It is a recognized religion of the empire. One of
Many.
many. He didn't make other religions forbidden. He simply added Christianity to the acceptable ones. But he did a second thing. He personally stated that he was a Christian.
Is that why he probably did it?
Oh, supposedly he had this vision, and in this vision, on the eve of battle, he was told, "In this sign you will conquer." And he saw the sign of a cross in the sky. And so he had his army erect a cross in front of them and went forward to conquer.
The Crusaders.
Well, this is long before the Crusaders. This is 700 years before the Crusaders. But he goes forth to conquer. But the second thing is he says, "I personally am a Christian." Now, how did that affect the empire? Yeah. If you wanted power from that point on, where did you look to get close to the empire?
Church.
Yeah. Become a Christian, claim you're a Christian, now you've got something.
Where they started selling indulgences.
Yeah, well, that's gonna come much, much later. But now to gain the emperor's favor, you give lip service to his religion.
So once he did that, then you no longer would be killed as being a Christian.
Correct.
You
But
said he was a Christian?
I don't know. I definitely believe his mother was. His mother actually, one of the things that his mother tried to do is his mother actually took several pilgrimages to Jerusalem and Israel and tried to identify the holy spots to record them for history so that they wouldn't be lost to history. You can argue whether she was good as an archaeologist or not, but at least that was one of her goals, was to preserve the history of Christianity in the Holy Land. Make of that what you will. And that brings us up, that the Muslims controlled, other than the very short time when the Crusaders took over Jerusalem. Just a thing with the Crusaders, because people will make this claim, and I see people on college campuses today making it, that Christianity has killed more people than anything else in human history. Well, let's set the record straight. In the Crusades, which is they're referring to, what was the death toll in the Crusades? 4. It's hard to get a hard and fast number, but it was no more than 3 to 6 million. And that's from both sides. That was both Muslims killed by quote unquote Christians and Christians killed by Muslims. The total number of people on both sides was no more than 3 to 6 million. Well, let's look at, as opposed to that, to mass murders. What are the largest mass murders in history?
Just went over this.
But what are they? Number 1 on the hit parade is Stalin or Mao. I've heard new people are saying that the Mao numbers were fudged I've heard now 60 million people from Mao is the newer figure they're giving. What was his religion? No.
Shinto, not
No.
That's Japan.
Maoism.
Atheism. He was an atheist. Number 2 on the hit parade. Stalin. 45 to 50 million. Now you compare that to 6 million total on both sides of a war. Stalin killed 45 to 50 million people all by himself.
But the people that argue this argument tell me that they consider Hitler to be a Christian killing the Jews.
Okay. Let's go to number 3. Who's number 3 on the hit parade?
Hitler.
Hitler.
In our lifetime.
Hitler. No, on the total hit parade. These are the largest mass murderers in history.
Doesn't Genghis Khan fit in
Mhm.
there?
He didn't kill anywhere near 50
Okay.
million people. No.
Okay.
Hitler is 30 million, give or take. What was Hitler's religion? He was not.
New Age.
New Age wasn't invented yet.
He was a Catholic, wasn't he?
No, he would have been, if he was in his Christian heritage, he would have been Lutheran.
Isn't he like the superior race?
But
Humanism?
what was his, I'm sorry,
Humanism?
yeah, because he followed Nietzsche, who was a humanist. But probably the best descriptor of his religion was occultism. He was an occultist.
And what did you attribute Stalin to?
Atheism.
Both Stalin
Stalin
and
now,
Mao.
every communist is, their official religion is atheism.
Official.
Yes.
Did Hitler make an official religion?
No.
It would have been like
But-
the Germanic gods.
Which is, yeah, but he believed in pantheism because he believed in the German gods that had formed the master race and his religion, but it's basically occultism. He believed in these,
Believed in Atlantis.
yeah, in all these spiritual things, which is why he was erecting this collection of religious artifacts from around the world.
Yeah.
And that's why they can take the takeoff on that in things like Indiana
I was
Jones,
gonna say.
where
it's
he was
like what
trying
we're
to-
talking about.
because he was trying to collect those kind of things. He was,
If they had any power.
yeah. And that's what he was looking for, was the occult power.
Yeah.
Number 4, and Genghis Khan, but it's really hard to get who he,
But plus the world population was much smaller.
what
Per
small.
capita wise, probably. Right,
Genghis Khan would
because
have been,
Pol Pot
Pol Pot's number 4.
was per capita wise, he's taking a city of 3 million and turning it into 100,000 people.
Yeah, Pol Pot's about 6 million.
Pol Pot's number.
4.
4. Pol Pot's about 6 million. And again, what's his official religion?
Communist.
Communist. He's another atheist. So atheism, the figure that's bandied about is atheism killed somewhere between 100 and 120 million people in the 20th century.
Wow, Stalin's 110.
Yeah, and then you add in the 6 million for Pol Pot, then you're almost to 120.
Well,
What are you talking about?
Stalin, I've heard,
It's over 30.
But Hitler's not an atheist.
Oh,
He's an occultist.
I've heard so many different figures for Stalin. So many
I know,
majorly varying figures.
I know.
What did you say, Christianity?
Well,
The Crusades, 3 to 6 million.
he's talking about
3 to
one
6,
for
3 to
instance,
6
but they'll also name what was in Spain?
In what period?
Oh. I want to call it the insurrection, but it's not called.
talking about the Inquisition.
The Inquisition.
Inquisition.
Nobody expected.
Yeah, but the Inquisition, again, you're talking the numbers of people were nowhere near these levels of people.
Yeah, but once again, the world population is different.
But again, Spain, it was a very limited group of people. The Inquisition was horrible, not for the mass numbers. They didn't have huge numbers of mass graves. It was the level of torture that they did in killing the people that makes the Inquisition so
Because
horrible.
when I talk to the woke, they'll mention Inquisition, they'll mention the Crusades, obviously.
But again, you're talking a very small number of people
And
comparative to those numbers.
they'll put Stalin and Hitler as Christians because it was Christian nations.
When Stalin came to power, the Soviet Union had been an official atheist nation since 1917.
But Russia is how old in their mind?
But I can call a horse a cow, but that doesn't mean it goes moo.
But you understand how they're
I
Eating it
understand
over.
how they are trying to bend the truth.
Yeah.
But that's like saying America is an animist nation, because how long were the Native Americans here worshiping their ancestors and the sky spirits? And Christianity has only been around for 300 years, so America isn't a Christian nation. You can't do that. Once Russia embraced atheism, every person in the leadership of Russia in the 1930s and 40s was of what religious belief system?
See, this is-
Common people might have attended the Russian Orthodox Church, but the leaders who were carrying out the policies of the nation,
Atheist.
what was Stalin and all of his cohorts who were actually doing the murders?
human.
Every one of them were atheists.
And Hitler persecuted Christians. I mean,
Oh, of course he did.
countless
Just for the record, if you go to Jerusalem, they've got a wonderful wing of the Holocaust Museum in Israel dedicated to this.
Christians. Why not?
What was the total number of Jews killed in the concentration camps? No, more than that. 6 million. 6 million Jews.
6 million non.
But there were, the total number is 12 million. 6 million of those were non-Jews. As many non-Jews were killed as Jews. What were those people, the 6 million non-Jews killed?
Sympathizers, gays, undesirables.
Undesirables, mentally deficient, what we would call today specials. Anyone with any kind
But
of
there's the
mental.
broad brush of undesirables.
Right.
Anybody that wasn't,
Gypsies, Eastern European, Slavic peoples that,
which never would profess to be Jewish,
Correct.
but
But-
were a nuisance to society.
the Romani, and then about half of that 6 million were that, if you add all those together, the undesirables and all those, you get about 3 million, give or take. What were the other 3 million?
Christian.
Christians who sympathized, protected, and helped the Jews. Or post-Hitler in other ways, yes. So, Hitler was not by any means practicing Christianity.
The family that was taking care of Anne Frank
Yeah.
went to the concentration camp along with the Frank family.
Correct. Yeah. So you see the role of history, how much this is not a new thing at all, what's happening with Israel. It just shows how little that satanic principle has changed in all these years. Israel has always been the center of satanic hatred and has constantly been that. And we need to understand, because they talk about the Jews who invaded Israel. That's what they're saying on Columbia University and stuff. Well, we know how long have the Jews been in Israel?
Oh, the Jews who invaded Israel, okay.
When the British divided the Palestine Mandate, how was it divided? Over 2/3 were given to the Arabs. What is the 2/3 that was given to the Arabs?
Well, obviously Gaza. and
Something
West
No.
Bank.
Transjordan,
Which is
just now, is what you're saying?
now,
Syria?
no, it's
Jordan?
real simple. Yeah, the nation of the Arabs The Muslims got the entire nation of Jordan, which is double or more the size of Israel. And they got the West Bank, and they got Gaza. Israel got that tiny little sliver, and in the mandate, it was that given to the Jews. What is modern day Israel? Was that by the British mandate given to the Jews?
Obviously, you want us to say no.
No. It was given to a coalition of Jews and Arabs that were to share it together. But what was the immediate, and what happened with the Jews? We'll accept that, no problem. What happened with the Arabs? 5 armies attacked within months. They told the local inhabitants to do what? Flee! We're going to wipe out every Jew, kill every one of them. And then you can go back and take anything you want from their places.
Promises.
And they were promised that they would have this massive windfall of everything the Jews had brought into Israel. And they would have the houses, they would have the lands, they would have the money, they would have the equipment, everything the Jews had brought with them would belong to them. There was only one problem with their little plan. They didn't win. So what did they do next? This was 1948. What did they do next?
They've invaded a couple more times.
They waited until 1967 to build up their forces. And what did they do in 67? The 6-Day War.
And they
They
lost
invaded again. And what happened that time?
They lost more.
They
land.
lost ground,
What did they lose?
Gaza and the West Bank.
What did they lose that
Jerusalem.
mattered most of all?
Jerusalem.
They lost Jerusalem. In the 67 war, half of Jerusalem. 3/4 of it, actually. So what did they do then?
They've invaded a couple of times.
They waited until it was the middle of a Jewish high holy day, Yom Kippur, and they
Invaded again.
attacked the 3rd time, 1974. That time, they lost everything. Israel drove them all the way back to the Jordan River in the east, all the way across the Sinai in the south.
And so that was-
They took all of Gaza, they took all of the West Bank, and they took all of the Sinai.
And they got the Golan Heights,
And they got the Golan Heights.
which is a geographic nightmare because you've got the big hill to.
To bomb the bejeebies with cannons. So what did they do then?
Attack more.
They started intifadas. Well, these attacks, these army attacks aren't getting us anywhere. We'll start intifada, and they started the terror campaigns. And that's when you have, the hijacking of all the Israeli planes, the murder of the Israeli athletes in the 72.
Passenger buses exploded.
Yeah. And that has been up to the present day. Yeah. They've only shot, in all fairness, they haven't done much. They've only shot 10 to 15,000 missiles into Israel. Not, can you imagine if Mexico shot 10 to 15,000 missiles into the United States?
Shot 10 missiles.
What would be the response in Mexico? Yeah, Mexico would be a crater. We wouldn't have to have the Panama Canal because it would be underwater from coast to coast.
Good night, everybody.
10.
All right, so what would you, if
Thanks,
you
Pastor
were
Tom.